Yeah. Would you please stand and join me in the pledge?
Mayor, hold on one second. We've got the wrong Zoom link up, so
Okay,
it's not start the meeting just yet.
okay. Can we say the pledge though, do you think?
You want to do that and then fix it, or you want to jump right in?
We'll jump right in real quick and do that. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now you can fix it. Oh, where was Missy at? I didn't see her. Thank you. We'll get started shortly, so. What'd you do, John? I said, what did John do over there?
Mayor.
Hmm?
You
Mhm.
know,
Yeah. Oh, is he? Oh, didn't they diagnose him with cancer? I think they did. They diagnosed- Technology. Oh, that's what I wear. That's all I wear. Josh. They're comfortable, and you don't sweat. I said, I'm usually soaking wet, where I found these shirts. Where'd you get yours at? Sam's Club hat, about $14. I wear them all the time. And I put my glasses right here.
Julia, can you hear us?
Yep.
can Lance, thanks.
Go ahead. You ready, Rochelle? Yeah, undo roll call.
Councilmember Larson,
Yes.
Councilmember Wyatt,
Present.
Councilmember Dan Hahn,
Present.
Council President Cox. Present. Councilmember Stubble,
Present on Zoom.
Councilmember Josh Hahn,
Present.
Mayor Richardson.
Here,
You have a quorum, Mr. Mayor.
thank you. All right, this is just a work session. I'll remind everybody, this is a work session. It's not a voting session. We don't ask for public comment during a work session. This is time for the council to ask questions and have discussions. So I'm going to change things up a little bit. I'm going to go to a staff update real quick, and then we'll go to the mayor and council updates. So, Ann?
Hi, this is Ann Even. I just wanted to let you all know that I put a copy of the press release that just went out at the end of today on your desk under your agenda. And that is just in regards to the fireworks show at the rodeo grounds on the 4th of July in the evening. We've been working with a team pretty intensely, specifically over the last 6 weeks. And we have come to a conclusion to cancel the fireworks show that takes place on the night of July 4th at the rodeo grounds. I encourage you to please take a look at this press release. If you have questions, I can assist you or have a future meeting with you about that. But I just wanted to let the council know tonight. And this was sent out to the press today, right around probably just after 5 o'clock.
Questions? Councilman Larson?
Yes, Mayor, I just want you to know that I know that Ann and there's been several other individuals have literally scoured the state trying to find people and stuff to make this thing fly. And it certainly hasn't been for a lack of trying, you know, so I appreciate all the work that went into it to get to this point. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, John.
Anything else?
Mayor,
Go ahead, Julie.
if I may, and since I'm not there, can you give us the reasoning, please? I imagine I can guess from what I've heard about the work that's gone into it, but can you tell us the reasoning?
Could you repeat that?
Yeah, I think with the little bit of an echo, could you talk extra slow? Sorry, I didn't catch it.
Yeah, sorry. Could you just tell us why, since I don't have the press release in front of me?
Yeah, and I apologize, I didn't send that to you ahead of time. So if we just reference the press release, and I'll keep a couple extra copies on the back there too, and I can get this emailed over to you. Once again, the statement just reads that with LOTRA, this decision was made after careful consideration of all the changing rules and regulations that it takes to provide a safe public fireworks display and finding an insured firework handler prior to the deadline. We just want to remind the public that fireworks are still allowed in our community. This is not a statement of cancellation of all fireworks, but just a reminder that fireworks are not allowed on Main Street, city-owned property, including the rodeo grounds, city park, parks, Lander Golf Course, airport parking lot, as well as the area between the Fremont County Detention Center between Amaretti and Fort Farm Road. And then also a reminder to the public that fireworks are not allowed on any school district parking lot or property. Please note that the Pioneer Days Rodeo will still be taking place July 3rd and 4th at 6:30 p.m. Tickets are available at the gate, but they still are doing pre-sale tickets, so you can go to lotra.org to purchase those. And then I'll just read these two statements as well from both the city, myself, and from LOTRA. This is from me. We deeply apologize for the cancellation of the firework display. This has been a long-standing tradition that's been enjoyed by many. Please know that all partners involved have worked very diligently over the past 6 weeks to overcome a wide variety of complications, and this decision was not made lightly, as John alluded to earlier. And then this is a note from Paula McCormick, the president of LOTRA. Lander's Pioneer Days is famous around the state for many reasons, starting with the Lander Community Foundation Challenge for Charity Races, the Lander Senior Center Pancake Breakfast, Pioneer Days Parade, Rotary's annual Buffalo Barbecue, Lander class reunions, the 129th annual Pioneer Days Rodeo, and the ability for individuals to have their own firework displays within the city limits for their own enjoyment. We ask that the community go out and make this one of the most memorable 4th of July experiences to date, from Paula McCormick, LOTRA president. And just so everybody is aware, plans are being made for a community fireworks show in 2024. If you're interested in being part of that working committee to get that off the ground, please reach out to me. We hope to have that preferably beginning of August or perhaps even late July. There's a lot of things that we just want to get a committee up to speed on, and we have some ideas for some solutions of what could work, and we want to talk through those. So if anyone is interested, please reach out to me here at City Hall or send me an email and we'll get you on the invite list to set up that new committee.
Mayor,
Go ahead, John.
one more question, and I know that you had talked about it in the email, but so what happens to the fireworks that we got this year?
I don't have a final
Okay,
stand on that. We did put an inquiry in today and he was going to talk and come up with some ideas. So I hope to have a solution with that soon. Just note that this is firework company's busiest time of the year. And so I also wouldn't be surprised if that potentially gets sorted out next week. So, yep, we're on that one. Yep, thanks.
Councilman Hahn.
So we spent the grant money then?
So the grant money has been spent, but we're looking to see if they would be open to a restocking option or a full refund if they might have the ability to resell them, maybe even this week. So yeah, I'm hoping that we can get to a good conclusion for that. I don't think any other grant money has been expended for this particular project. We just had a lot of things on hold and pending.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Well. No, thank you, Ann. I know how hard everybody's worked on this and it saddens that this happens, but do thank you guys for everything you've done. So
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I just want you to know that this has been a very long and hard process, and a lot of hours and time have gone into trying to come up with a solution. I think I would feel differently if I didn't try, or that this committee wasn't working hard towards exploring a wide range of options and solutions. But I think we can truly say pretty much every stone has been turned and checked throughout this process. And that'll all be provided as working information for a committee for the future, so that they kind of have some history and knowledge. And once again, if you want to be part of that, that'd be a great way to learn all the ins and outs and details. We all know a lot more about fireworks today than we did last year.
okay, thank you. Lance.
Yes, Mayor and Council, just a quick update. We still have several disconnected water lines throughout town and open patches. We're aware of them and still waiting on materials to arrive when we ordered them over the winter. So huge time as far as getting things here from materials being ordered and when they can actually produce them and get them here. So I'm hoping just after the 4th, we're going to have those materials and be able to start on some of those repairs where we loop back in and lower water lines that have given us fits or problems, or where we're going to have issues before we start talking about colder weather and paving, shutting down and those sorts of things. So still feels like spring to me, but unfortunately we're almost to the 4th, which means we're on the downhill side of the summer. So we've got a lot of work to do from a public works perspective. Tank and pump station project is moving forward. It's a lot of submittals. And again, we've given the contractor extra time because it's ordering parts, getting materials here. I'm not sure they'll put equipment in the ground this year or not, based on when all their parts will be here and their schedule. So we've given them all of next year as well in that season. So could be a lot busier for us next year. Lincoln Street's going to be the same way. Just because we bid a project and you're not seeing anything doesn't mean things aren't happening. So we're planning on bidding Lincoln Street with the same approach. Get the water line stuff here, get the sewer stuff here, be able to go, and then we'll be tearing up so that the contractor can be efficient once they're ready to go. So a lot of that engineering is happening as far as them submitting on the material type, us approving, and then suppliers ordering and delivering. So just update on where we are on some of our big things going on, and happy to answer any other questions you guys are thinking about.
Councilman Hahn.
Lance, is hot mix coming down any at all? It's been really high for the last couple of years. Is it coming down?
No,
price?
I think that we're all paying the price still for it. So they don't have a lot of reason, even if oil prices drop, to see that drop a lot. So I haven't had 71 call me and tell me that they're going to lower any of our patching prices yet, but I'll keep trying, see if we can,
Yeah.
work it down a little bit. But, it's just one of those things that might be staying up there for the long run. And it'd be really nice if it would come down because oil and asphalt affects a lot of our project expense, especially when we're doing streets.
Thank you.
Councilwoman White.
Thank you, Mayor. Lance, a couple of things. One, just noting, great to see the sweeper back out and taking care of things. Glad to see that happening. And then also, I know we started mosquito spraying. In my understanding, it says perimeter of Lander right now. We're going to do interior streets anytime soon.
Yeah, we're very aware that this is a bad mosquito season with all of the rain that's happened. We're doing as much larviciding as possible versus just fogging. So we're still running out with our resources, trying to eliminate some of those places where they're breeding from. But yes, I think that we're monitoring, we have traps, we see our numbers, and then our numbers are telling us to spray more, but still trying to, be understanding. We're still focused on a West Nile program, so when we see a different breed of mosquito that shows up that carries that, we get even more aggressive.
Right.
And that's when some of our no sprays occur if we actually do see West Nile present in any of that testing. And we're working with Riverton on our testing now because the county dropped they're part of the mosquito program. So it's more the two communities figuring out how to do the testing, and we'll keep you informed more as we move along, but especially around the 4th of July, try to reduce as much numbers as we can, but I expect it to be, hopefully some of the fireworks create that cloud that pushes them away.
So the citizens of Lander really need to take that message to heart, shoot off a lot of fireworks in town and join the mosquito fighting brigade.
Yeah,
I think
there you go.
you can find any number of residents willing to help you out on that.
Perfect.
All joking aside, thanks for that update. Yeah, I think folks have noticed it's a bad mosquito year and everyone is really wanting to spend time outside. And in theory, it's supposed to be getting hot one of these days. So good to know.
Just real quick on that note, I was talking to Jason and they drove around our neighborhood down around North Park. That new machine we got, you can't hear it. So you won't hear that rumbling noise going down the highway. And I just wanted to throw that out there because they could be spraying and you're not going to hear that. Yeah, no. So it was kind of neat to know that it ain't going to wake you up at 10 o'clock or midnight. So. Yeah, I wish it would. Oh, forget the nose spray. Regine.
Thank you, Mayor. I've been talking about the Safe Streets for All grant application that we were not successful on last year. And in hopes that the county would participate in a partnership deal, they have declined to do that. They said they're just not ready to add in some of the projects they're working on, which was Baldwin Creek and Tweed Lane. So I am hopeful that application will still go forward this year, but without a partner that may not happen. And that, just to remind you, that was a $3 million grant opportunity. Table Mountain Living Community, a lot is going on. We will be bidding the water and sewer to the lot and then improving Bishop Randall Drive. That bid will go out this summer still. We are starting loan applications. We know what grants we got from the ARPA funding, and so now we're going to start low interest loan applications through the state. The Alzheimer of Wyoming and the Housing Authority is putting on a lunch and learn this Thursday. It's at the community center at 11:30. And we'd like to invite all of the council. It's geared towards what a caregiver has to do with an Alzheimer person in their home, but very useful information. And if we get a memory care unit, that will help some of these caregivers get some relief. So please come to that if you can, 11:30 on Thursday at the community center. The council will probably also receive an invitation yet this week for a June 19th informational session on the Table Mountain Living Community.
Should be July, ain't it?
Oh, yeah, July. I lied. July 19th. Thank you very much. So maybe you already got it. I didn't. So please attend that if you can. That's a little more in depth. And then we will also be adding all the new information for Table Mountain Living Community at our next open house that the city's decided to do every 6 months. Happy to entertain any questions on those subjects if you have any.
Mayor, I don't really have any questions about Table Mountain Living. I just want to, give a community service plug about like how needed it is in this community. Again, I've said this before, it's a personal interest of mine, and there's very limited resources for dementia, Alzheimer's patients, memory care is very limited. It is something that is very much needed, and so we appreciate the effort for sure.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Sorry.
I wasn't at the last meeting and I tried to raise my hand to give some good news. So you approved the budget the last meeting. Well, Tara had, the county assessor had sent me the assessed valuations that had come in that had been finally approved. And we actually, that line item will see about $85,000 more. That I had increased my line item by 3% and the assessed valuation actually went up by 14%. So we will see more money. I doubt we'll do a budget amendment for it and we'll wait till the end of the year like I normally do, but that was good news. The other thing that I kept raising my hand for is there was a question about the service line utility warranty. Councilperson White had asked about it. We vetted this company many years ago for only sewer lines only. We do get a small, less than $3,000 a year royalty from them. Their publications that they send out twice a year do look like they come from the city of Lander. It has City of Lander's logo on it. They don't make any of their payments or anything to us. It's still, we just don't have a water line replacement. So if people ask you about it, the city has vetted this company many years ago. If that's something that this council doesn't desire, then we could look into other companies or that offer that same service. If that's something you want to offer, we don't get much money out of it annually, but we do get some money for them sending that out. Where I was at last meeting was a federal government grant summit that was put on by Governor Gordon Barrasso and Cynthia Loomis. They looked at the numbers and realized that Wyoming receives the least amount of federal income in the rest of the United States. So they're trying to get people to apply for more, train people more to go after different grant money and different pots that were available. They had all the federal agencies there. They did 2 days of grant training class and then all the agencies got up and spoke. We did get good news on the SLIB. So we have about, $6 million right now in loans with SLIB. The interest rate right now is 2.5%. We can refinance those now because they're going to 1.5%. So that's a savings. We will be redoing that. The other thing that Lance and I are working with SLIB on, we have a meeting with them on the 13th, is so when we went to SLIB with our 10 projects, we were only funded for one of them. So now they have the SRF funds available at the lower interest rates, and municipalities aren't utilizing this money. So they're still trying to spend their 2019 money, award their 2019 money. So it looks good for us and they really want to work with us. What we would like is combine them all as one big package, because if it's over $15 million in monies, the interest rate's only 0.25% interest, which makes it affordable. What we're trying to ask them is if we have 9 projects, could we make that a multi-year event? And they have told me that they went to the larger municipalities several months ago, trying to get them on board with doing such a thing, because they said other states are already doing this SRF program where they're doing a lot of projects, making the most of the money to get that lower interest rate and financing in multiple years. So we would be doing the same thing. Hopefully, we don't know how many years they'll let us take it out. If we did 2 projects a year, then after each project closed, they would just go ahead and start that loan package. So when we're talking about rates being increased, it would be anticipation of being able to make our future loan payments. So our last batch of money that we received from the SRF, what I did was when I took in that loan payment for 1 year off everybody's bill, and I segregated that money so that we had that money sit in a special pot as restricted money. Then when the first loan payment came due, we already had that money and we could pay the prepaid interest that had accrued from the draws that we took until the loan finalized. So I would anticipate that we do the same thing with this each year. We would just restrict that money for the loan payment until it came due that following year. We hope we'll have more information. We're gonna meet with them on the 13th. If everything works out all right, then we'll have a public hearing meeting on July 25th at that work session. Because we have to have a public hearing because the application will be due August 9th in order to make the December SLIB meeting. It has to be due 120 days before the SLIB meeting. So we would have a resolution also in July when we had the public hearing.
Lance?
Yeah, just a couple more things to add. I think Shari did a really good job talking about that, but SRF is state revolving fund is where that's coming from. And there is still a potential forgiveness in these loans. And
Oh, I
so,
forgot to do that. 25%.
yeah.
Right now, we're guaranteed a 25% forgiveness, which is about $10 million.
And so if we can get forgiveness, that's a great thing. And we're looking at, they said maybe up to 50% if we can finagle our way to that. So we're trying to see what that next number would be. So there's still potential to receive that. Again, this is the program where the money has to be there when you apply for it. You could be competing against other people. So we want to be ready though, if we get zero, to make sure that we have the funds available to go through that process. So really good thing there. And the reason we're talking 2 projects per year is just management, making sure that we don't get ourselves from a staffing standpoint in over our head. There's a lot of decisions that have to be made as projects are moving and that we need to be able to keep up with those and make sure that our quality control is where it needs to be. If we could take on 3, maybe we'll do that or see what it looks like. But I was hesitant to tell Shari that we can do multiple big projects. And we also have the tank and pump station project we just talked about, as well as Lincoln. If we kicked in, both sides of Fifth Street at the same time next year on top of that, we just don't want to turn the community into something that can't be passed. If we have so many things going on at once. A little worried about inflation. If it continues to go, we should be building now because it's probably not going to get cheaper. And the more projects we can do now and pay for them later, we think this might be a strategy that's better for the city to take on rather than trying to generate the revenue at this low interest rate. We will be money ahead is what we're recommending. So we'll have more information, like you said, when we can finalize some of those discussions and a solid recommendation at some point for you guys to review.
Thank you. Question. Councilman White first, yeah.
Thanks, Shari, thanks for your clarification about so we do have a sewer line agreement, but not water line.
Right.
So the letter that this resident sent was specifically a water service line in protection plan that's with the city of Lander logo, et cetera.
Yeah, no, ours is with SLW, sewer line warranties.
Oh, so this is SLW Service Line Warranties of America,
Yep, that is.
but it's saying for water service specifically. So have they expanded and now they're
No.
including?
We haven't signed anything with them to be that. We're just with the sewer part of it. The letter that was given to me, it read sewer on it. I haven't seen the one that said water.
Okay, so I have a copy of this. I can send it to you. So it seems
Okay.
like we should get this figured out if this is valid or not, because it
Yeah.
is going out. Councilman Larson just said he got it. So let's
Yeah,
either
forward that
confirm
one
that
to
it's accurate, this group has expanded, or it's not something folks should be jumping on.
Lance?
Yeah, another concern with this program is that we've seen a lot of stopping at the property line versus actually replacing to the main. So we've seen lots of issues on what they actually do cover, if that's a decision that you guys want to think about from a public works standpoint and what our name is on. So I think it's worth a discussion. We've been told that some of the carriers on home policies might be better as far as what they cover, and another option for people to look at. So I guess if our name's on it and people can actually get the infrastructure replaced that's bad all the way in, that might be something that we talk about in more depth if you guys are considering a change.
And Shari, I just forwarded you, they sent me a photo of it and I just forwarded it to
Okay.
you.
Councilman Hahn.
My question was on the multiple projects. So if you're gonna go with 6 or 8 or 10 projects stretched out, do you just have a name of a project or an idea of a project? Or do you have to have the idea plus the engineering? What do they allow?
They're the 10 we've designed, so they've asked for our engineering spent to date, which we've provided them. So these are the lists that we've given you that we applied for through the ARPA funds when we put the 10 projects forward. The only clean water one we asked for was the sewer lagoons improvements. The rest of them are all streets, water, sewer, street infrastructure, curb and gutter, ADA, and sidewalk where needed. So Cascade, Buena Vista, Fifth Street from end to end, Lincoln, I guess McFarland Drive. Oh, yeah, the Dillon subdivision. So Valley View, Grandview, finishing up that area as well.
If you do that, and I agree with it, do you still have room for emergencies that pop up in between that?
Yep. I mean, we'll still be handling our day-to-days with our crews as is. So we'll deal with putting out fires. And if this water line replacement works well with us buying materials and working with contractors as we're revisiting our RFP for contractors and engineering, I think that could be a program we continue to carry in the summer as well. So those will be specifically aimed at undersized water mains and ones that are shallower and giving us problems. So at the same time, we'll be continuing to work on those, and that's going to be making paving those streets a lot easier if we're able to run that program too. But I want to make sure this summer goes well before I recommend continuing it.
Mhm. And we still have a little buffer in there for overruns and.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, we're funding the capital replacement plan, and I think that we're going to be talking about water rates and sewer rates as we go. And so that's where we're being prepared to make sure that we can fund those things.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome.
And the street portion of this, they'll cover taking it back to where it was at. So the curb gutter sidewalks we would have to take out of optional money. So at the end of the year, we'll have about $6 million in our optional, because we've been holding on for that money, hoping to be able to make the most of it by doing these projects. So we'll be able to utilize that money as match money for that portion of it. So it's about $5 million is that cost, 15% of the total cost. So we would be looking at loans and total projects of about $34 million worth of loans.
I like the 34,000 better.
34. Well, we've got a lot to replace, but I think with that, we're not counting on the optional tax to have to renew. And if it does, we can do more with it when we get it. So the hope is it will renew, but this program can run on what we're actually bringing in and putting out there to date if it works out appropriately.
Thank you. Let's move on, Adam.
I don't have anything tonight. Thank you.
Rachel.
I just want to thank the council for responding to my request to comply with the public records request that we had, and just remind everybody that any emails, text messages, Facebook page posts on your vote for me for city council type page are all subject to those public records requests. Thank you.
Any other questions? None? We're gonna move right into mayor and council updates real quick. Councilman Hahn.
Yes, so from a public standpoint, I've heard a lot of bickering about the Sinks Canyon camp being canceled, I guess.
Mhm.
So I don't know.
I
I'm just hearing about it from the public, so I don't know.
Should
What's
have been a
going
press
on
release go out. Rachel, did you want to address that?
There were a number of factors, I suppose, that were discussed. The enrollment numbers were less than half of what we traditionally have. There were some issues with, we had hired some personnel whose plans changed, And at the end of the day, the staffing ratios changed as well. Then there were some safety concerns about, the landscape changes and things that insurance companies will cover, that changes too. So there were a couple of activities that wouldn't have been able to successfully happen this year. And in conversations with staff, the decision was that if we couldn't provide some of those traditional activities, that perhaps camp wouldn't be successful. So there was the decision to regroup next year and to get those certifications and things in place, and hopefully be more successful and know earlier what we needed to do to comply with those requirements.
Okay, cool. That's all I had on that. And with this next piece, I mean no disrespect. I joined the city council to be the public's voice. I attended meetings before I was a council member and got shut down and watched the other public members get shut down as well at the meetings. 4 times now, I have been interrupted and shut down for speaking. It is very unprofessional and quite disrespectful considering I listen to everyone else and don't cut them off. The last meeting, while speaking about the public's tax dollars being handed out to the same person twice, maybe 3 times now, I was shut down by an appointed city employee with a self-appointed title. Council is budgetary, so may I suggest possibly staying in your lanes and allowing me to speak. And with this, please, Mayor, allow all council members to speak, whether you or the other people agree with it or not. And that's all I had on there.
Thank you. Okay, Councilwoman Cox. Oh, Julia, I forgot you're up there. You're up.
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you. Is that echo okay?
Yeah.
Not too bad. Great. The only update I have is that I attended the Proposed Conservation Districts meeting this month. And what I'd report back from that is that the Conservation District is working diligently to address the issue that council received a letter about from Mark and Mary Sanderson regarding some hot spots of E. coli in the river around some of the residences near the city park entrance. The district is actively working with state agencies, the county, the property owners in that region, and city staff. Hunter and Lance have put a lot of effort into to address these issues. And so that was discussed at the Conservation District meeting at great length, and probably will continue to be as we try to craft a solution to those issues. And Mayor, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Councilwoman Cox.
Yes, thank you for following up with that, Councilwoman Stubble. I was curious if anyone had heard back. I did reach out to those constituents and to come up with a time, just because they happen to be in my ward, to come and look at the property, et cetera. So I certainly don't want to get out of my lane, but want it to be a priority on my end as well. So thank you for that update. I would also like to have somewhat of a discussion. We've had a lot of discussion recently about camping in city parks, and I'm sure that all of you have heard it. And I think it would be a good idea to at least start talking about the pros and cons, and so we have some answers and not just personal opinions. I mean, yes, you can have personal opinions. Of course we do. That's why we sit here. But maybe just having some problem solving and discussion about what is there a need. There has been a lot of traffic in city parks specifically this summer. And so you know how I feel about just fees for fees sake. But it might be worth somewhat of a study or looking at some options, or is it even an issue, or what are we really looking at here? So I've had a good opportunity a couple of times to talk to some folks that have been staying in the park, and just kind of very few questions about, what brings them here, et cetera, and really interesting information that comes out of those conversations. So I do think it might be worth our time to have a roundtable discussion about it and hear from the parks folks and Lance and Shari just about revenue, et cetera. The other thing is, in light of all of that, there are a lot of events coming up here in Lander, which is so exciting. The summer is such an incredible time here in Lander, and I'm really looking forward to it, and I hope that it benefits everybody around, but I would encourage you as a council, especially, and obviously community members, to branch out and get to some events that you've never been to before. And really take them in and really see what it is they bring to our community, what they're offering, who they are, the culture within those subsets of community. And so I think it's a good opportunity to get kind of outside of our comfort zone and see what's really happening and having some really cool conversations. And people love to talk, especially when you're like, oh, I'm on the city council. Oh, then they have things they want to talk about. So it's always it gives you good information and good insight. LIDA update will be provided here later by Eric Andrews, as he presents the LIFT program changes that we discussed as a LIDA board. A lot of time and effort went into that discussion. And definitely, I believe it was like was it a 3-hour meeting, I feel like, which was really good and beneficial. A lot of really good input. Fremont County School District #1, the current superintendent, Dave Barker, will be leaving this week. This is last week, and they'll have a new superintendent, Mike Harris. Again, he's an open book. He's welcome to questions if you have questions. They've definitely been in the media as well, been dealing with some book-related issues, some drug testing policy, just a lot of, different topics with the board specifically. So that'll be good to have Mike Harris on board. He brings he's very intelligent. He is a people person. He understands, the big picture of sort of where we want to go as a community, not only the school district, but also as they are part of this community, such a large part of it. And let's see, I have quite a bit, so sorry about that. The community services block grant, I do want to bring that up as it's been kind of a topic from FCAG, which is the Fremont County Association of Governments. There's been a change, and as of October 1, they will be going to a different model of funding. They used to fund sub-grantees a certain amount of money that would sustain those programs. And those programs include, and not limited to, I'm not going to remember them all offhand, but the transitional living home, Eagles Hope is what that's called in Riverton. There's another, it's not the Good Samaritan anymore. Geez, I have it in my book bag. It doesn't matter. The group home is a recipient. Injury Prevention Resources has been a recipient. There's a couple of other agencies in Riverton specifically. The Help Center receives funding. They're no longer going to be receiving those drawdown funds from the community service block grant. And it will be a considerable amount of money. So if you hear any of that sort of thing, you can certainly forward them on to me. But the model is going to go to more of a approach with a case management style of helping folks really get out of poverty. And so the idea will be you work with a referral source, you're able to get their needs met at a different level, and then they're able to then move forward from there in a direction that will keep them out of the need for those other services. And ideally, they have children, there will be a ripple effect of keeping those children also out of poverty. It's a good model, but it is going to be it's going to be felt with a little bit of a crunch for some of these agencies. So anyway, that's on the horizon. I also would like to discuss and maybe bring back to a work session flood mitigation discussion. It's been a little bit of time. There's more discussion within the community. A lot of people feel like we've already voted and that's in place and the wall will be coming up next week. That's not what's happening, but we maybe need to have another discussion about, where we're at. And you guys do such a good job of those. And I know you've had them, but maybe another council meeting opportunity. I also want to talk about the health savings account. Do all of our staff receive that? That's a great benefit. So thank you, whoever brought that to the table. What a quality benefit that our employees get.
Did you want me to answer?
No, I just am grateful.
Oh, okay. Well, you asked to all of our staff, so. it
Yes,
feels like a
there was a
question.
head shake. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And that was on my whole list. So thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councilman.
I would like to see us schedule that city park discussion, maybe next work session before it gets lost. And the only other thing I had was if people haven't been up on the mountain and seen the flowers, we have it's a record year. It is, the flowers are unbelievable. So if you haven't been up there, you need to get up and check out our mountain because it is crazy. It is beautiful. That's all I had, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman White.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, well, our backyard is fantastic. We are so lucky. I've got a number of updates here. One, I'm psyched others are interested in exploring the conversation about City Park, whether we're poised to act on it or not. On the Monday, 9 a.m. of Memorial Day, I walked the dog through there and there were 60 vehicles camping. You know, I realize that's a big weekend for it, but that was an impressive volume of it. So some other things. So Senior Center hasn't met since our previous one. They meet the morning of our regular meeting, so nothing there. On the 19th, I spent a couple of hours listening in to the Harvard Growth Lab presentation to the Joint Committee on Regulatory Task Force, exciting sounding name, but specifically about their ideas for mitigating some of the housing concerns. And while there was a number of recommendations made, and if you saw some of the headlines, one thing that got pulled out was focusing on our larger cities, Cheyenne, Laramie, Casper, possibly Sheridan as well. That was in the context of economic development of where can we expand housing so we can recruit larger businesses. But I think we all know that smaller communities are very much in the same boat of needing serious changes to be made. There were some great points about that. One of the overarching themes is that one of the challenges to providing more housing opportunities is that we are over-regulating what can be built and in what style. I don't mean design, but lot size, height, et cetera. And that's one way that we could make some changes for that. I want to keep shouting out to a couple of things about the Good Samaritan meal. One is that it is obviously a need for folks in our community. I was there 10 days ago. 280 meals were served, and at that point, we'd actually run out of food, sadly. On a positive note, everything except the tomatoes had been donated by local businesses, which, I mean, really amazing, like massive amounts of meat, lettuce, desserts, fruit, et cetera. All of that had been donated by local businesses, which is really neat. And so very needed, clearly, for that. I also want to give it another shout out. If folks weren't in around this weekend, if you missed the first summer Lander Presents concert, that was unbelievable. One, it was great music, so kudos for that. But more when we talk about the value of primary dollar events, once again, City Park was packed. Walking around looking at the vehicles, huge number of vehicles, period. But especially if you started looking at where the license plates were from and the out of town visitors that came for that. So as that flywheel of economic development, folks came here, booked hotels. My understanding is that hotels were pretty near full, if not overflowing. Meals, gas, groceries, incidentals, et cetera. Yeah, what an incredible event that again is done strictly by a group of volunteers willing to serve the community. So kudos to all of the Lander Presents folks. The remaining ones are on Thursday nights. So hopefully folks can attend those as well. But that was a terrific night. And just again, I think a really neat example of how a relatively small group of folks are working really hard and doing something pretty awesome for our community. So that's it for me, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Larson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just a few things. While we're talking about events and so forth, Did the pig roast die this year?
No,
It's still a go.
yeah, we've got donations by 20 businesses and we're still on a go for the 21st and 22nd.
First and 22nd. Okay,
July.
I'm gonna be out of town, but
I think you told me that earlier.
okay.
Yeah.
Good. Well, I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
And I'm also in agreement that we need to look at the city park camping. I went through there several different times and I've never seen more or less than 30 some vehicles in there. And just something that we need to pay attention to and look at. Went to the chamber board meeting and there again, small group of people that put on a bang up project. The Brew Fest was very successful this year. They done a great job. They were really happy with the Museum of the American West property to utilize. I guess that went extremely well for them. The chamber is doing well, you know, they currently have 291 members, you know, that's big. You know, they do a good job. Lance, who do I check with to get the marker, you know, for the line marker, so I can get the parking lot prepared up there at the rodeo grounds for the rodeo?
Like a baseball field marker?
Yeah,
I could just have Jason meet you up there at a certain time or whatever you want to do to,
yeah,
To
just
get that
just
done.
get in touch with you then.
yeah, just call me and we'll get that lined.
Okay, that would be great. Other than that, you know, I think that the challenge for charities this weekend, it's always, I don't know why it seems to be a little more stressful for me this year, but I just, you know, you kind of grit your teeth and say, okay, how many more times are you gonna do this? But they're doing a great job, you know, that's just, that's one of the projects that Lander can pat themselves on the back on and say, you know, you guys have done a great job. And so I really appreciate the Lander Community Foundation and all that they do. And I think that's it, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just move on real quick. Just a few reminders I have. I want to recognize our firemen on July 1st that they're having their annual pancake breakfast. So get out and support those guys as well. We have the pancake breakfast at Senior Center on the morning of the 4th. So Tuesday, if you need to go have some breakfast and stuff before the parade starts, get out there and support the Senior Center also. And like I said, a lot of good things happening this month, and the next month, and the next month in Lander. So if you're bored in Lander, you're not looking very hard for something to do. So like I said, good things are happening, and I just get those few things out there, and we'll keep on moving forward tonight. Lance?
Yes, Mayor, wanted to ask a question to Melinda if I could. And so the camping discussion that you want to have on a future work session, is that contemplating like a charged fee and maintaining a campground at City Park versus, yeah, I guess just so that we're prepared and more specific if we need to dive into that as staff and have parks here available, you know, is that a drop box for gathering fees, or kind of what opportunities are you wanting to talk about?
Sure, that's great. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay.
So I think it encompasses all of those things. So you hear, or I hear from various folks that we should charge for camping. I hear that we shouldn't charge. I hear that we should provide a kiosk for donations. You know, I hear that we could, there needs to be some contribution for those that are staying. There's arguments, there's valid arguments from all sides. I don't, you know, and I don't really have a position necessarily myself, but I think it's worth, I don't like to kick things down the road. You know, I think it's been brought up enough that I think it's a valuable discussion to have and to see where we stand and talk about the pros and cons of all of those items that you talk about.
Perfect. I think we can be ready to talk about why we don't currently charge, and then you guys can lead the discussion as to where you want to go. Great. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on. New business. These are non-action items, just for discussions. Everybody remember, Eric Andrew, presentation from Lift Program and Change. Thank you for coming, Eric.
All right, so now that we're past, I've been here the last couple of sessions. In the last one, we actually approved the last round of lift awards. And so there was a lot of discussion, a lot of good points brought about during the last two discussions that we've had. So I took that back to Lita. And we had, I think Melinda said, is approximately 3-hour meeting. It doesn't count the countless number of emails we've had back and forth, continuing that discussion. Some additional meetings I've had with some of you sitting here today. So we've kind of come up with some plans to tailor this program a little more. There's a lot of public acknowledgement to what's going on with it. So we think it's time to put a few more restrictions in place, and maybe tailor it to what the city really wants to see in economic development. So I'm gonna go through these. So we have 4 recommendations I want to talk about, and then get your feedback on so I can take it back. You know, this is a work session. I'm here for discussion. I'm here for your ideas as well. And then I have 2 other matters of discussion, some things that we think are important, but we haven't really been able to narrow in on what that recommendation should be. So I kind of, in an effort to save some time here, I don't want to turn this into a 3-hour meeting. So I'll go through these. Well, I'll go through one of our recommendations at the end, and then I'm going to clump 3 of them together up front. So you can kind of see where we're going to tailor this to. And then we'll have the matters of discussion here at the end. We got 2 points there I want to talk about. So first off, the scoring rubric that was designed seems to be working. So our LIFT committee is scoring applications, we think, appropriately. The way that rubric works, you know, the applicant has a large application. I think everybody sitting inside this wall here has access to that through Slacker. So we can see all the information regarding that program, what their total project cost is for their effort, the total project cost of what they're specifically asking for, the amount they're requesting, the economic benefit, all that information is there for us to make a decision. And that's what LIFT is using, and they hold pitch nights so that they can evaluate these people up front. They listen to their plea, they review that with their application, and then the LIFT committee really, they take that information and they score it. So we have a series of questions that they use to score. And when it's all said and done, their application can score on a scale of about 0 to 70. So depending on where that's about 13 points per level, you can get scoring that awards you 0%, 25, 50, 75, or 100% of your request. So they may ask for 40% funding of their total project cost. If their score puts them in a 50%, in the 50% level on the scoring matrix, they'll get, 50% of their ask. So put that out there first and foremost, because what we looked at was not necessarily changing the rubric, the questions, LIFT's method of scoring these things, but how we're really awarding based on the scoring matrix. So one of the things we put up was first tweaking the application a little bit and putting out there up front, if you're a private entity, or let's just call it non-governmental, because we don't want this to be considered for not-for-profits either, you can't ask more than 50% of your project cost. So if your total project cost is $100,000, say you want to, revamp your facade on Main Street, and your project cost, you have a contractor come in, and they estimate it's going to be $100,000. We want private entities to put forth their own financing, whether it's through a local bank, another local granting agency, something. They need to have skin in the game. So we don't want them coming to us with an application asking for the full 100,000. So we're putting forth a recommendation to cap that at 50% for any non-governmental entity. We did this because we did want governmental agencies to be able to come ask for more. They may need more help. It may be governmental asks are typically going to be more for a community benefit and not just an individual benefit. So we looked at that. We did discuss and look at the dollar cap that several of you suggested. We kind of looked at that as maybe tying our hands a little too tight. So we wanted to be able to go above and beyond if we had a really good applicant that needed a large amount of money. So that was one of the changes we're recommending for the actual application process. Two of the other things we did or that we're recommending to kind of really hone in on keeping asks smaller is one of those is in weeding out some bad applications. So we've had this situation where we still have funding to fund some applications that may only score for 25% of funding. Problem is if you ask for $100,000 and you get awarded 25% funding, that's still a $25,000 award. So one of the things we kind of decided was if you don't score at least in the 50% level for awarding, you're not going to get funded. So instead of having a 0, a 25, 50, 75, 100, you got to at a minimum score 50. So 50% or better in the score on the application, then you're eligible for an award. We wanted to further ask or reward people for smaller asks. This is going to satisfy a lot of what's been discussed here about event funding, small operations that are just looking for a little bit of help. You know, one of the ones that came to mind in this last awarding session was the Waveform Healthcare that's providing training. They had a relatively minimal ask, and they scored 75-ish or so, I think. So we're recommending that if your ask to lift is $15,000 more, that you can bump up one scoring level. So say an application comes in, it gets graded, it gets scored, it's at the 75% level. Everybody likes the project, but it's really hard to score for 100% funding. Because that ask is not as strenuous on public resources, we'll bump that up a level. So maybe they get 100%. Maybe they're only asking for $5,000 and the economic benefit to the community is going to be double that. So we kind of looked at maybe using that as a tool to minimize some of the larger requests and then to bump some of our smaller requests above those larger requests. If that makes sense. So those are kind of the three recommendations we're making to the actual scoring system, the application system, and the awarding system. So I will listen to your comments.
Questions? Councilman Hahn?
So I see you're not going, you feel a cap will tie your hands. What about a one-time award? I think the thing that really bothers me, but it bothers a lot of people, and to tell you the truth, whatever happens, you know, we're rolling the dice on people, you know, accepting this. But the one thing I think that bothers me is they can come back, and the other thing is there's no continuity between Riverton or the county. And so these people are, they're coming here, they're going there, they're having, you know, their partner go in there. And the thing is the unfortunate thing about Fremont County is word gets around. And I want to tell you that I'm proud of what you do. And I hopefully you don't take this personal, because, you know, all we're doing is delivering a message. I mean, I have thoughts, but I mean, the things that I hear are some pretty influential people that are not liking some of the things, but the one-time award and not having everybody on the same. I know that gets real complicated, but if we don't do this right, it's just gonna be a failure, that's all. And like I said, I don't want to beat you up. I'm just, these are the things that I'm hearing. Some people are getting a lot of money and a lot of people don't like it. And that's all I have. I thank you very much for your time and that's all I had, Mayor.
Councilwoman White.
Thank you, Mayor. And again, Eric, thank you so much, not only for the long lead of meetings, but you took a bunch of time with me this morning. One of the things we talked about, I'd like to add in here, and it's about that cap amount. It's one of the things I still struggle with. I would be much more comfortable for a private business to have a cap amount. And I know one of the questions we've had and others have had is like, but what if some amazing opportunity came up? Well, then let's suspend the rules if that were to happen. But by and large, the things that have come to us, I think we would have all felt a bit more confident in the process if we'd had a dollar cap amount. And from my point of view, opinion wise, if a private business has this amazing business opportunity and they're asking for a substantial amount of money into the six figures, if they're a private business with a great record and a great idea, they should be able to get funding sources for that and more traditional. And what we would provide up to a smaller cap amount is what I'll call icing on the cake. So I'd love to, I appreciate what y'all are saying. I would still love to have a little more conversation about that, or ask Lita to have a little more conversation specific to some of the private businesses. I think that would help us as a council. I think that would also be something that would help the general public as well. So, and I'll let you go back to, and I can share some other things later.
John, you got something?
No, I just pleased with the opportunity that you gave me to sit in on the meeting and explain some of the stuff here that's going on. I think it would be nice to have some more of the behind the scenes type information come to the council that you shared with me there that night. And it makes some of this a lot more palatable.
And I'll just respond to a couple of these. I think they're great ideas. We did talk about the dollar cap, just specifically referring to Missy here real quick. And you mentioned suspending the rules. We'll talk about some of that transparency. That's going to be a point of discussion here in a minute. But yeah, it's something, none of these recommendations are set in stone. I just want you to be aware, we are having these conversations and trying to determine which is the best route to go. So if a cap is what everybody determines, like a dollar cap is what needs to be done, then we can absolutely build that in. I mean, ultimately, this is supposed to be a decision made by both LEDA and council. It's not us trying to force something down your throat. We want this to be an effort that benefits our community. That's what we're all sitting here trying to do. And we know the community supports that. That's why they passed the tax. So we want to start showing that to the community. So yeah, if that's ultimately where we want to go, let's do that. Dan, same thing. Getting more than one award, right now we have built into the rules, they can apply after 12 months. If we want to change that rule, we're certainly open to that. And same thing with the multiple grant ask, I mentioned last meeting, and this is kind of the approach that the discussion lead has had. If somebody wants to apply for a LIFT grant and they want to go apply for an EDGE grant, and they want to go apply for a MOVE grant, and if it's all benefiting somebody in our community, we look at that as a win. And I know there are people, I look at this in some ways as well, that they're getting a big benefit from across our entire county. But I would rather see, those other agencies awarding programs within our city limits. So we have built into our rules that we're only going to fund projects within our city limits. So that's kind of the rule right now. If MOVE wants to fund projects within our city limits, we certainly don't want to turn away that economic development. So, but that is something we would definitely be interested in listening to. And if it's that big of a sour perception within the community, we certainly want to change that. So.
I do have. Right, Mayor.
What's that?
I do have a quick comment on something he said and then I'll,
I have one
oh,
here
sorry,
first.
yeah.
Yeah,
You
don't
have
worry,
to-
I'll be easy on you. I'm new at council, you're new with Lyft. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
I actually I had a couple of questions, so I was looking through a printout, of the approved Lyft projects. So in 2022, how does it work if you have a business owner that has more than one business, just different names that are going out and they're receiving these awards? Looks like within the 12 months, it's just a different business name, but the same owner of the buildings. And they're not only doing it through the city, they're doing it through the county, and they kind of switch
Yeah.
which one's going where and when. So how does that work? Having the same owner of a property with different names or side by side properties, per
Right.
se. Different names on the companies, but receiving these.
Yeah, so I believe right now the applications are based on the business. So it wouldn't be any different than, if I owned, a car wash right here, and then I had an auto parts store right here, and I'd applied for applications, back to back quarters with one company versus another. I don't think we have that built into the rules right now where that person can apply. But that's certainly something we're open to. So-
Right, yeah, it kind of looks a little fishy. I mean, because the one they were awarded 100%, and then the next one they were awarded 75%, and they're not small amounts.
Right.
And then you go to the county and, they were awarded 100% on one and a little under half on the other one. So it's the same owner of the buildings per se, but he's just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth and
Right.
receiving these.
Yeah, and that's what I was getting at. Like right now, we don't have anything in the rules that say,
Right.
if you apply here, you can't apply at Move. Or if you get awarded at Move, you can't apply for our program. Our program is specifically designed to award recipients within our city limits. So we kind of can't control who goes after Move funds. I guess we could design a specific rule for that. If that's what council wants, we can certainly do that.
I was just wondering,
Yeah,
like I said, I'm new as well. I'm just looking through all this stuff and seeing it and it's like, oh, well.
Yeah.
Seems like it's the same owner of the buildings, but different names going,
Right.
pretty rapid on.
Yeah, and I don't think it's
large
uncommon
amounts.
for people to own multiple businesses. And if they're doing a lot of different economic development projects, I think that's, that's part of it. But if we want to limit it to an individual, that's certainly something we can add.
Right. I just look at it as, if he owns more than one building or one business, he probably could take a loan and get it all done. and do it,
Potentially.
but- Right.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Yeah, no, and so I also think it is an important distinction. So you mentioned that this particular awardee was awarded at 175. That's 100% of the ask. And our 50% cap that we're recommending would limit that 50% ask to their total project cost. So i.e., if they were awarded $50,000, their total project cost would have to be in excess of $100,000. That way that they have skin in the game. And that percentage is flexible by any means. If we want to limit it to 5%, that's certainly something we can talk about. We think 50% is fair. If you start limiting it to 5%, you do start weeding out people that maybe can't afford it and probably could use it the most. So if you have, for instance, we had an application recently that asked for, I think, 95% of their funding. But when they came to us with a financial plan, they didn't have cash for any of it. So, or they had cash for the 5%. So, and that could have provided economic development within the community. So we definitely want to consider those. But we also want to treat everybody else fairly. So we don't want to say, oh, we like you, we'll judge you on this set of rules. And because we don't like you, we're going to judge you on a separate one. So we need to find a system that works for all the applicants. So does that help? Good.
Councilman Cox.
I just wanted to make a point of reference to with Stacker specifically, and I just sent an email to you that is council members. Is anyone on or accessing it? I haven't yet, so just FYI. Okay.
I believe everybody had access, but we changed we changed where the platform was at. So if you had a login before, we're now at Lander Stacker HQ. It's a different platform. So, but
Okay.
we could show everyone how to get onto there.
That would be perfect. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Maybe we need a training system. I'll be honest, it took me 4 meetings to get access to Stacker, so
Yeah, I think so too.
it's not an uncommon problem, but it is important. And maybe y'all weren't aware, but you do have access to the entire application. And this, we'll talk about some of this again in a second. Anybody have any questions on those 3 items before I move on? Because the next one's a big one.
Go ahead.
I like the clarity of the 50% skin in the game specific to that project. I think that was also a point of different opinions earlier about, well, if the company had the building, but now they wanted to get equipment in the building, does the building count as their skin in the game? And I think we've narrowed that to no, specifically, you want to buy this widget, you got to be willing to be 50% invested in that widget.
Yes.
And I like that clarity and also really appreciate the idea for giving a little more oomph and support to those smaller asks. I think that likewise will go a long way. One, to get more applications in and get some of those generative, hey, you know what, here's a simple idea that could have a big impact, and start getting more kind of lowering the barrier to access for small scale entrepreneurs. And I think that's likewise really beneficial.
Yeah, and when you're talking about dispersing tax dollars, if somebody comes with a $10,000 ask and you can see the economic benefit, say it's for an event and it's going to draw in 300 people into the community, and they're only asking for $10,000 or $5,000. Those are the wins we want to show, right? Those are the things that it doesn't cost a lot to bring in a lot of primary dollars. And a lot of these events, if you help, with advertising or management, and we can help provide that for these events, they're just going to get better and bigger. So the long-term impact of funding an event one time to help to assist with some marketing, and I'm just using this as an example, could be really, really exponential economic development within the community. So, we want to, it's LEDA's opinion that to bump those people into a higher priority. So instead of, somebody with a large ask that they may qualify for 75% and take all the funding before the little guys get some. So we think that's important. So then we hope you can jump on board with that as well.
Lance?
Just so you know, Mayor, Julia stepped out a while ago when we lost her on the screen, and she said she'll be back as soon as possible, but it doesn't mean that she didn't have questions.
Well,
or
I'm just gonna
isn't gonna
say,
come back
she
at
usually
some
got
point.
questions I'm looking for up there.
Yeah, I
so-
would have expected her to have some questions as well, but she might have something later if she
Okay.
steps back in.
Thank you.
So the third or the fourth recommendation here is something that's kind of come up more recently. We've recognized that I believe it's 75% of this economic tax dollars is what we're distributing out with Lyft. And those are going to individuals within the community. Sometimes it can be seen as picking winners and losers within the community based on the applications. But what LEDA really stepped back and saw was we're not really providing an avenue for community-wide development. I mean, governmental agencies obviously have a opportunity to apply for these as well, but we're just not getting those applications. And we see a need for projects being part of LEDA and the designated EDO for the city of Lander, Economic Development Organization. We see a lot of projects that come through that could benefit the entire community. And they're not getting done because, quite frankly, we don't have the bandwidth to do it. We're a volunteer board. Your city staff, listening to their updates tonight, it's not like they have a lot of bandwidth to take on some of these projects as well. So what LEDA's come up with, and this, I know this was discussed previously when we had an interim executive director earlier this year, but LEDA thinks that potentially $25,000 quarterly could go towards an operating budget before it hits Lyft. The reason why is to be able to support some activities such as advertising what our wins really are. If we want to talk about what's really going to get this tax passed next round, it's going to be putting out the perception that this tax is working. So advertising cost, whether it be the other piece being whether it be a consultant or a salaried position to be able to work directly for economic development within the community. One of the things that Lita got a taste of while Tracy did serve in that executive director role is we had somebody at every Wyoming Economic Development Association meeting, every Wyoming Business Council meeting, representing the interest of our community. We had somebody that was actively touting all of our wins within the city, especially economic development, like the Living Center that we have going in, the Maven project. And the other thing that we've realized is we don't have somebody that can actually take on projects that are really spoon-fed to us. We recently had an opportunity to participate in the Wyoming Business Council Community Review, and we simply have nobody to run that effort. It's a relatively minimal cost to participate in that review. My understanding is the Business Council would send somebody here for about a 6-month period, do a deep dive into what economic development really is for our community, what the driving factors are and where we can succeed. And quite honestly, we just don't have anybody to do something like that. Other projects that we haven't been able to take on, phase 2 of Enterprise Park, we have nobody to write grants to go and provide for that infrastructure to build that out. There's a whole list I have here of projects that we haven't gotten done for our community. And we, quite frankly, we just can't with a volunteer board. Every member on my board has a full-time job. A lot of them are small business owners that work way more than 8 hours a day. And then they commit to like 3-hour meetings like we had the other night, just discussing this one program. So we don't have the bandwidth to do it. The city doesn't have the budget in their general fund. I think we're allocated $5,000 a year for our economic development budget. So that's the ask. You know, we try to keep it limited. We want to run on a shoestring budget. But we think $25,000 a quarter is less than 20% of the total funding, economic development tax funding. And we really think that's what the tax was meant for. The tax is economic development tax. Lita is the EDO of or the designated EDO for the city. And we should probably use some of that to fund our efforts. So I'd welcome your feedback on that.
Is it? Missy?
I totally agree that advertising wins would be a benefit to us, and the Forward Fremont County PAC has officially reformed. I don't mean has formed again, and I wonder if that's something that could certainly help with helping advertise some of the lander wins, or where they might be more focused on more general public education, but that could be a short-term process to help educate the public about what's been successful and, you know, the jobs added, et cetera, for that.
Certainly is. I'm not affiliated with that organization, so I don't want to speak on their behalf, but I am aware that, you know, they're the ones that help get the tax passed to begin with. So they're definitely, I think, kicking off and going to try to move that forward again. I don't believe tax dollars can be used to fund that. So even if, you know, I don't know that we could participate that with any kind of operating budget we were allowed. But yeah, that's something, certainly they're going to be touting wins for the economic development tax. And they're going to be doing that countywide, I believe.
Yeah, they're getting private funding for their efforts.
Right.
Because correct, we can't use tax dollars to tout. Yeah, which kind of poses an interesting question. If we gave money to Lita to then use to tout this, does that potentially put us into a quirky situation? But
You know, Lita.
that's not necessarily for us to decide tonight.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Lita's tasked with running the LIFT program. So I certainly think touting, we can call it touting wins if we want to, but I think it's more providing public information on how those tax dollars are being spent. So
Right.
whether they're wins or losses, we can probably go either way. So we like to think of it as touting wins because that's what we
Yeah.
want to do. We want to see the tax passed again. But certainly is probably more providing information to the public.
Yeah, it's a tricky, we run into that with a 1% for the roads. You know, folks get miffed if we don't advertise like this was done
Mhm.
using these tax dollars, but then they don't want us to use the tax dollars to advertise, but then our myth that the public isn't educated about where the tax dollars are going, and it's a bit of a pickle to be in.
Well, and that's certainly something we've thought about, it's not easy for me to sit up here and represent an organization and say, hey, I want you to give us the tax dollars. But ultimately, the city is asking us to do economic development on behalf of the community. And we just don't have the funding model outside of this tax to do that. So it seems to me, when I look at it, as a community member, we voted for this tax to be passed and collected within our community. Why are we not using it for more community-wide projects? Why is it all going to private individuals or private entities for their projects? So, I think there's a balance there. We absolutely don't want to get rid of lift. And we're talking, they're getting on average between $140,000 and $150,000 a quarter. So we're talking less than 20% of that on a quarterly basis to go fund an organization to really fight for economic development in this community. And we'll talk about some of the other things we have in mind for doing that here in just a second as well.
Yeah. It all seems like the chamber should have an active role in that as well. I mean, in theory, they're also part of economic development and Main Street supporting businesses that perhaps there's also funding opportunity for some of their budget to contribute to.
Yeah,
something like that.
certainly, I am on the chamber board, but I don't want to speak on behalf of the chamber right this second, but I will say, being on that board for the last 4 or 5 years, the chamber is a membership driven organization. It's mostly funded by our membership, and it's mostly geared towards providing benefits for our members. So it's, I want to say the chamber's there for a community-wide effort, but you do have to join up as a member. And the chamber is also, they're actively involved in driving tourism within the community. In fact, the city has a contract to make the chamber the official visitor center of the community as well. So they have a lot on their plate, and they have a much larger budget. And they have the same problems that everybody else is. We have minimal staff to run a lot of different programs. So, but yeah, chamber is definitely part of economic development as well, because they typically are the first contact. So.
Councilman Larson. Yes, I feel that we rely so much on volunteer boards, but it's just critical at times that we pay somebody that really knows what they're doing, that is familiar with the goals and what needs to happen to get into to promote economic development. And so I guess that I like the idea of using the 25% on a quarterly basis to help fund somebody and to help with the advertising, to do the whole 9 yards there. I think that's a great use of the money, if you can find, but that's going to be the critical thing. You can't just get schmo off the street corner, but you've got to have somebody that knows what they're doing. But I think it's well worth the effort.
Yeah, it's, to us, we have a volunteer board, and it's made up of business leaders throughout the community. And we understand economic development. We understand, and we're active. But to have somebody that's what their job is,
Right.
is to go out and there's a whole lot of different things that we can do within the community. I mean, there's a lot of different paths we can go for economic development. So we can figure that out as a council and lead a level, determine which routes we want to go there.
Yeah. Councilman Horn, you have a question?
Yeah, so you're saying 25% quarterly, and then what do we give the airport and WRTA?
I don't know those numbers.
20% and 10%?
20%, 10%, yeah. And I'm not
Right.
asking for 25%. I'm asking for 25,000 per quarter out of our 70%.
Okay, but you're a volunteer organization, right?
Yes. Yes.
I'm a volunteer fireman and I don't ask for money. See what I mean?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
It's a volunteer.
Right.
Right. So I don't understand If you're a volunteer, why you want to get paid to be a volunteer?
Well, I'm not getting paid.
No, whoever it is, I mean.
Right.
For advertising,
Does the volunteer have paid staff that works for them?
volunteer.
The volunteer fire department, do they have any paid staff?
City member, the fire administrator,
Okay,
that's one.
so you have a leader of the organization that's paid to lead your organization?
Not really, no.
No,
We have a chief that volunteers to run our organization.
but you do have a fire administrator? Is that what you just said?
Kind of, he's more of an airport worker,
Okay.
but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we can continue being a volunteer organization. I mean, I listed off a couple of projects that haven't been done because we don't have the bandwidth to do it. I think we have an opportunity here to fund that bandwidth. Because I think it's important for the community to get projects like this done.
Okay.
And I don't think they're gonna get done with a volunteer organization. I mean, could the fire department, and I'm just.
Are you
asking
comparing like what you guys are doing to what we're doing for?
No.
free?
No, I'm not
This is just a
comparing. No.
question, but
Yeah, I'm not making a
Um,
comparison. I'm asking the question. Could
we
the
take
fire department-
countless hours in dangerous situations
I'm aware.
for
and
nothing.
I know, but what I'm asking, could you do more if you had paid positions?
No. How
If
could you do more? We're,
I'm just asking. I'm asking the
you
question.
can't, you can't do any more than that. We do PR. We do, everything we possibly can, and we advertise. We do all that stuff. But it's I look at a volunteer organization as, hey, I'm proud to be a volunteer to this. And I don't need money for that.
Yeah. Well, and I guess our community passed a tax to provide additional economic development with our community. And
Our
what I'm-
community they weren't well informed on what the taxes were gonna be. It was new. They didn't know, but now they know.
Okay,
And it's not pretty.
okay. I don't know that you necessarily speak on behalf of the entire community.
A lot of it. I speak to a lot of people, but I cannot speak for the whole community, no.
Right. Well, and that's fine. What I'm saying is what we're getting out of economic development right now with a volunteer board and a $5,000 budget is all we're ever gonna get. So if we want to go after larger projects and actually provide real economic development to this community, we should probably commit to it. So, I mean, that's where we're at.
I'm just, yeah. I'll leave it at that.
Sorry, did you have something?
I just want to point out too, Josh, to your point, firemen do get paid to go to meetings and you guys do get a retirement out of it. So we're really not comparing apples to apples. He's just trying to present the fact that you have Chris, whether you think he works at the airport or that his job is to take care of making sure things get done, making sure things get replaced. That's a paid position. They're just looking to be able to have somebody. I think the biggest thing that's happened with Lyft that we're the most negligent of is we have not advertised our successes, our stories, what people are giving us when they come and do pitch night. So the public's not aware of that part of it. I mean, and the particular instance when we're talking about all the money that's given to one entity, if you look at his payback period, he's going to pay back $77,000 a year in sales tax, in lodging tax, and property taxes. He's going to pay back, and that's not money we would have been receiving otherwise. If that business didn't exist, we wouldn't collect those dollars. So he's going to be paying back in sales tax dollars all the money that he's getting in grant money. And hopefully every business that does that is a taxable transaction that's going to be a new business that comes to Lander where we're not currently collecting a sales tax for that industry. That's a win for Fremont County, for everybody. Personally, I think that when this was set up as a tax, it should have been a countywide thing. They should have hired a person and it should have been the whole county participating in grant applications so that you were looking at, because a win in Fremont County is a win for all of us. If you get a business in Riverton, we get sales tax here based on our population. So when you shop in Riverton, you're not hurting Lander because we're still going to get sales tax dollars from it. So it's a win for Fremont County that really this tax would have been better spent had it been a county-wide effort, in my personal opinion.
Does Chris make 25,000 a quarter? No,
Well, that, well, actually, if you look at Chris's total benefit package with, because this person won't get retirement, this
I've
person
seen-
won't get insurance, Chris's benefit package is over 100,000.
I've seen it.
So this, your person is gonna be probably a Schedule C, I mean, a 1099 miscellaneous person that's gonna pay their own taxes. I'm assuming you're not gonna hire a full-fledged employee and,
Yeah, we don't have any kind of budget put in place yet. The thoughts are a $50,000 to $60,000 employee. So the $100,000 ask is to support an entire operating budget.
Hey, Councilman Hahn.
I definitely agree with that. And I've said that. I know you guys are really under the gun, but we really need to get some of this. We need to get some of the stories out. We need to get some of the happy stuff that are, people, they've changed their lives, the city's lives. We need to get those out there so we can help promote this. We really need to, I mean, that's a big, big deal. Because you have tons of rumors out there and rumors kill things. And I tell you what, the success stories, if we can get those out there, it's really gonna help. I mean, it's really gonna help. I mean, some happy stuff, I mean, that's what I see. And I think that's a huge, huge deal. I know you guys are under the gun and don't have any time, but that'd be great to have some of those stories because we really need that. We really do.
Did you have one more thing?
Yeah.
Oh, you want to talk to?
Well, Mayor, I was
Go
gonna
ahead.
ask, so Eric, did you have other things you wanted to share? Because I had some other suggestions to bring forward to you and council members, but just not sure what's the appropriate timing of that.
Yeah, so I have a couple of other
Okay.
talking matters. And some of it's going to address some of the questions we've had. So one of the things that's really on the top of our agenda is transparency. And there's a couple of different ideas we have. We haven't decided on anything as far enough to make a recommendation. One of the things we do realize, and we've had this discussion, you just said it, Dan, is we got to start talking about these. We do have a reporting system within Slacker, which we said everybody has access to now. And I think all but 3 of our applications since this program started have followed through with their reporting. One of the questions that comes to mind though, and this is probably where we can use some help, is that the application funding period is 12 months, Shari? They can come get their funding for 12 months. So if somebody gets awarded to buy a piece of equipment, they can wait 11 months down the road, 11 and a half months down the road, go buy the equipment, get refunded. So it's hard to come back after next week or in 2 weeks from now and report on the awards that y'all just approved 2 weeks ago. So the question becomes, is the public getting that information quick enough? Do we need to make that reporting and the funding period smaller so that we can come back after 6 months and say, hey, those ones we did 6 months ago or 2 quarters ago, this is what's happened. One of the ways we do want to do that is we want to work into these work sessions in our regular meetings that I seem to be hit every one of them now, is some reporting, maybe providing some press releases, providing some summaries in your packets that you can read about what kind of economic development we actually funded here. So that's one discussion we're having, is the reporting on that side. Another one is the fact that we should slow this process down a little bit. The last application period ended May 1st. The last meeting was end of May when you all approved it. So we had about 4-week turnaround time. I think it took 5 meetings for Lyft to determine if the application was eligible, hold pitch nights, do their voting, and then ultimately meet to make the recommendations. And we had about a 4-day window for Lita to exchange emails back and forth, frantically trying to come up with the recommendations and the proper ones to give to you guys. And then you guys literally get in your packet 4 or 5 days before your meeting. So we've thought about extending that timeline out a little bit so that everybody, all that information can go up the chain more smoothly. We think that would be beneficial. Maybe we make it a 2-month process. And a lot of this has come down to what Lyft is telling applicants when they'll be awarded. If they reply on May 1st, they won't, they're just like all of us in the room. They want to know May 2nd if they got the award, and May 3rd, they want to see the money in the account. And that's just, in reality, that doesn't work with the process we have in place. We have this process put in place to actually prevent stuff from being done in a fast method. So looking at that, I would like some of your feedback on that or some of your comments. And then the last thing is, we have these conversations when it's presented to you, hey, these are the awardees, these are recommendations, these are the dollar amounts, yada, yada, yada. Should you be provided or should we be providing the public more information up front? Specific details on what the project costs or what the project is. If it's for a building, is it for like certain infrastructure for that building? We need to know what the total, would it be appropriate to disclose the total actual project cost for doing that infrastructure? Then you can weigh that against what the ask is and you can determine how much skin do they have in the game? All these transparent items up on the front end so that the public has that information as well. We all have access to it through Slacker, so we can make a decision. But we're also all hearing it from members of the public that don't understand and don't have access to that information. We've always hid behind this wall of saying everything is confidential, but we ought to make certain details up front known to the applicant. This is going to be public information and we're doing it on behalf because we're spending public dollars. So those are kind of some of the ways we're looking at the transparency aspect. We haven't come up with an agreement on what that recommendation should be, and we would like to hear your thoughts on what you would like to see.
Thank you, Mayor. I fully support both of those things. I think having a shorter time frame and likewise 6 months is kind of what's in my head for that. With the idea of, I would hope folks are, when they do apply for it, are basically at that shovel ready. So I think that's a reasonable thing, and likewise slowing the process. So the application deadline might be the end of Q1. It's reviewed during Q2. Awards are made. I don't know if 1 quarter is a lengthy enough time or potentially, a 6-month time period, again, recognizing the other constraints folks have on that, but that also seems to make sense. I'd also suggest, I know the LIFT folks do a lot of work with applicants who aren't necessarily, they have a good idea, but aren't business minded and basically helping them create business plans. I would strongly encourage folks who can't provide an in-depth application to refer them to SBDC and then come back. I appreciate that LIFT members are willing to do that extra time, but that would also remove some of their harriedness because I think they do spend a lot of their time helping folks create better applications because those folks don't have the business savvy. We have existing entities in town that's their job to do that. I'd much rather see them like, hey, great idea, flesh it out with this person or these folks at SBDC, reapply later as a kind of a follow-up on that as well.
Yes, any more questions? You got one more?
Just an idea for that. With our current format of you can only apply once a year, some of the folks that are like the Lander Cycling Club that's looking for hosting multiple events to either communicate that in a way that they know they need to do it one and done or create some kind of process where they could apply twice in a year, something like that. I just recognize with those primary dollar events, that groups like, oh, and you know what we should also do in the fall, and they've already applied once, so they can't do something. So I don't know what that would look like, but that would be nice to allow some accommodation.
Yeah, and maybe we just need to decide on some clarification there. So, because you also want to be fair to other private entities as well. So if you allow it for some groups and not others, are you really, talking out of both sides of the mouth? So, but no, I think those are valid concerns as well.
So just real quick, Eric, thank you guys and thank the LIFT committee for going back and redrawing this up and looking at it. There's no voting stuff made tonight.
Yeah,
on what they want to do. And then I know that Ideal Inc. has a economic development person, Kevin Kashesnik over there that does a great job bringing businesses and stuff in, and he pays for himself. He's worth his weight in gold with the tax turnaround that we get from it. So this could happen for us too, hopefully it would bring in enough economic development to turn around and pay for that itself with tax revenue coming back to the city. So it's a good idea. Yeah, to try it. You know, but I want to make sure that the attorney looks it up, make sure everything's kosher, that we can give tax dollars.
Yeah.
To, lead in, because I know their business is started by donations and things like that. So I think we got to be really careful where we run that tax to and make sure that you can use tax dollars on with that group. So if hang in there and see what we can come up with, but I'll have Adam check into it and make sure everything's legal.
My last matter of discussion, and this is something that we need to exercise not only at Lita's level, but at your level as well. This definitely showed its head at our last meeting. But as leaders and decision makers with this tax dollars, we have to be willing to step up and say no. We're having this discussion every time at Lita, in all of our email exchanges. We really need to come together and determine what our economic goals want to be. And we need to make sure those applications are meeting those goals. If they're not, we're the last line of defense. Actually, y'all are the last line of defense, but we got to make sure that we're putting the proper recommendations in front of you. So we have to be able to exercise that scrutiny. And we all have to be comfortable with that. So Lita's going to work to do better at that. But we also want counsel. I mean, we had 2 no votes on the last one, and I absolutely stand by that. That's what you're there for. You're supposed to say no if you don't think it's right. So we did talk about as well, potentially voting on these individually instead of as a group, so that we can award some. And if it doesn't make sense for our economic development goals for this community, then we can shoot those down. So we have to understand Lyft is an administrator of a system that we've put in place. We've given them the right to accept applications, to score those applications and make recommendations off those applications. There's not a lot of subjectivity in what they're doing other than scoring and placing them in a level of funding. That's the only subjectiveness they have. They can't take an application and say, we don't think this meets our goals, we're going to throw it out. If that application checks all the boxes, it's going to get scored. And they score it fairly. So they may score it low, it may score in the 25% level, hence one of our recommendations to throw that level out completely once it gets there. But we have to recognize that Lita is ultimately the one that's supposed to try to make the best recommendations to you guys. But if the public is kicking back on you so hard on certain projects, we want you to stand up and say no. So, and we appreciate the ones that do. So we want y'all to know that.
Mayor.
Councilman Larson?
Yes, we had the acceptance of the recommendation from Lyft committee there last time, and I think there was several of us that thought, geez, should we step up and say no? And but then if you have the information that Shari just spewed out there, then it's a no-brainer. It should have been yes. Absolutely. But I did not have that information available to me, or didn't know where to find it or how to look it up. And so, I was just kind of shooting in the dark. And we were, in my mind, we were supporting the Lyft committee. We were supporting Lady, say, okay, you guys have done the legwork, and we've asked you to do that. So we're going to support you. But I like the idea that if something's just goofy as crap, then we need to knock it in the head. Be able to do that.
Yep.
And we can have a training session on Stacker too, so that you guys can see, because it's set up right now so that each of the applicants automatically get a form to fill out at 6 months and 12 months. And so in there, everybody that's been awarded money, they have attachments, they have what they've done with it. They've all had it in there. So we'll show you guys how you can log in and you can look at that, because it will make it easier for you to be able to speak to your community if you see what they've all been able to do with their money.
Mayor.
Great. Final words.
Yeah. Mayor.
Oh, you got no one?
Yeah,
Okay, go ahead.
yeah. So I do have a few, and maybe I'll just spew them out, being mindful of the time, and we still have things to go on. So a couple things that haven't been touched on that I'd like to share with mayor and for council and for Lee to consider. One is when it comes time to vote, I would suggest that we vote on individual recommendations rather than the whole package, so that it allows for some of that conversation and more in-depth about that. I would also, this is possibly a little contentious, since we're in a period of reconfiguration, my own preference is I would rather push pause on making any awards for this quarter until we have a system that LIDA, mayor and council can agree upon. And, just let folks know, we will take applications, the money's piling up, but we're not going to do any awards for at least, whatever date seems appropriate for that process for it. One of the things we initially talked about, and I do want to revisit, is the idea of a loan. And I appreciate Marilyn sharing that Goshen County really struggled with adequate supervision of it and had a lot of defaults. And I know that was also problematic for Leader years ago. And my suggestion is, I think it bears continued investigation. And again, that being, so a business would need to work with SBDC to develop a business plan. They didn't already have one. And then there are folks in the area who are qualified to evaluate that, and those are financial institutions. So having folks go through the process of getting a loan application from an existing financial institution that's based in Fremont County, I don't want to take their opportunity away from getting benefit from the work they've done. So figuring out a percentage of, we'd be willing to do up to X% of their loan cost, and the financial institution gets to do the majority of that, whatever that split is. I wouldn't want it to be a no interest, because I think there needs to be some kind of financial compensation for, I'm assuming it would have to be a city employee to make sure, so Shari, that might be you, or maybe it's Kevin, to make sure that payments are happening, et cetera, for that. So I'd love for Lee to consider something like that for that. And I think the benefit to us is that keeps funds available for future use and ultimately serves as more of a flywheel for that. And then the other one is, and I think all of us have heard these questions about why don't we have any kind of clawback in there? So the business is sold or they move or whatnot. And I know that's a concern for folks. My gut tells me that having a lower cap on a private business would help diminish the concerns about having a clawback. And in terms of actually, retrieving funds, the complexities of that, I can't figure out a way that we could do that both simply, efficiently, and without litigation, which then costs money. So again, I would strongly encourage, certainly for private businesses, to have a cap that would help minimize and mitigate some of those concerns about what happens if type of thing.
Those two specific items are something that we have talked about at the leader level. Loan programs in general, the administrative burden to run a small loan program are going to exceed any kind of additional income that would come back. And based on our evaluation of other small loan programs that have failed in the past, you mentioned Leader, Goshen County tried to do a similar program. We just don't see a lot of success there. And so that's definitely something we've talked about. It's just we haven't seen like a real argument to say we can do this. The administrative burden alone is like, you're going to ask Shari to start administering a loan program, 5 years for 15 grand. Is she?
Shari just gave a non-verbal expression of that.
So
Yeah.
Similar thoughts with a clawback. We had this discussion at our last meeting. We talked about it for a good long time. Because we think there's legitimate concern if somebody comes and requests capital outlay. They want to go buy a piece of equipment. They want to go fix up their building. And then they turn around and sell it. It's like, okay, we just put additional funds in their pocket. We haven't looked into all the legal matters. We did have some evaluation on it done, but the administrative burden there as well. Like, how are you really going to go after those funds? Are you going to turn around as a city and sue a private individual to get tax dollars back? It doesn't make sense in our eyes. Certainly our eyes are wide open though. So if there's some other suggestions there, or some feasibility that could be brought to the table, we would certainly consider recommending that. But right now, those conversations just
Yeah.
aren't going a lot of places.
I think the clawback's hard. I think the loan, to my understanding, neither Goshen County nor Leader had the rigorous review. And I realize that's a problem. Like, I don't expect Lyft to put in either the time or to gain the financial expertise. So that's the idea of having a public-private partnership where a private banking institution reviews and either deems them qualified for what they're asking for or not. And I think that would go a long way to offsetting the issues of defaulting on the loans.
Yeah.
But again, something for consideration.
Yeah.
It seems like it seems like it's something that could work. Whether or not that's the most prudent for us to go down that road, to be determined.
If y'all don't have anything else, I did say I would come here with a good bit of tidbit of information for you regarding the program. So since inception, we've awarded $1.1 million in tax dollars to applicants. I don't know the number of applicants off the top of my head, but I can report to you the total project cost for those applicants is right at $5 million. So we're a little bit over, on average, 20%. So the money that we are giving out there, the community members that are getting that money are also putting skin in the game for sure. So we like to see that. I wanted to bring you some kind of good news, and that we are having an impact in the community.
Yep, sounds good, Eric. I really appreciate you guys working hard on this.
Yep.
To really make things work.
We'll bring you
So
some more. You won't see me at the next meeting. I won't be here.
I
but-
think you're gonna come, you're a regular now. Thank you so much, Eric.
Yep.
And tell
thanks.
Lita and Lyft, we appreciate all the hard work those volunteers
Will
are
do.
doing also.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. Discussion concerning proposed resolution 1292 water and utility rates. Do we need to take a break for a minute? There you are, you're in. Okay, let's hope so. You said 10 minutes is all we got. So, all right, Shari.
If you looked at the water master plan, there was HDR had supplied a proposed rate adjustment, and it shows a 7% increase going through 2031. With working with these projects, I think they're still gonna kind of look at it, aren't they, if we consolidate all these projects?
Sure, I think in just the water projects alone, it was estimated between 45 and $66 million over that period that we're going to have to look at the projects in town as well as the projects around town if there's growth and development. So there's certain triggers that set that off, but all of it require money. So they're plugging back in interest rates, they're plugging back in the capital improvements on that plan. They're due to have that done at the end of the month. So we should have something in hand very shortly. But the reality is it's going to be expensive to replace infrastructure and to maintain it and to have the money in the bank to do so. So 7% is the minimum. This may adjust up as time goes on, and we'll bring more information if that were the case, but we're recommending adopting their current recommendation. And then if it were to adjust, we'll bring you more information.
I want to point out that according to the EPA for the affordability index, they say that your charges should not be more than 1% of your household income figured monthly. That number now is $65,014, which monthly is $5,400 and some change. So we're well below the 5417 for affordability for sewer. Water's amount is 2.5% of your household income. That would be $135. Water would, with just the flat rate, the new increase, it would be the $40. So we're well below what the affordability index says is what you should be charging for your water and sewer services.
Just a quick
Go
question
ahead.
of clarification. What is our median income in Lander?
65,000 $14.
6514. Thank you. I heard you say that, but I did not register.
And
And
that's one of the
I'm-
things that SLIB, when they're looking at awarding you points, they award you points for your grant applications of what percentage you get forgiveness. And that's one of them is if your state rate, what percentage it is of the total state rate. So the state rate is like $68,002. So we're really close to what the state rate is for the medium household income.
Do they give a range?
Nope, that's just the number.
Thank you.
The other thing of note in this proposed resolution, the top matrix that talks about tap fees and things of that nature, that needs to be updated. And we have been trying to get with Badger Meters to get their new pricing. So when this comes back before you, those numbers may look different based upon their new pricing. We haven't been able to get them to respond yet. But
I'm
we're hopeful.
actually wondering if if you could adopt one that says we would charge whatever the market was. Because what happens at, City of Casper just took this claim to fame. They hadn't been changing them and meter prices can change more than once depending on if they're available or whatever. So if we set this at a certain price and we're stuck with it for a year or going in and changing it every time the meter prices go up, if we can adopt something, Adam, that just says we will charge what the market, I mean, we don't make a profit on these. We charge exactly what we're charged for it. If we could adopt something like that,
We could, but who would set the market price?
the vendor.
Just the vendor or the
supplier.
supplier, then yeah, that would be totally fine.
I don't want to throw a monkey wrench in, but I'm going to. Some of the capital improvements that are being suggested are for areas of growth outside the area, which our existing customers should not pay for. And so if we are working these into master plans and we're looking at things like the North Second Loop, or we're looking at coming around to the industrial park or other areas where additional customers are going to be served, we have two options: to annex them or figure out how to serve them and not impact the city. In doing that, there's going to be a capital investment needed, even if we get the state to fund that at 67%. There needs to be the other 33% that will come through a larger tap fee and a higher rate. And so that tap fee will be repayment to make those programs work. Some of our supplementary systems that are already on us, such as Red Fox Park, the Wyoming Life Resource Center, the industrial park, they don't have replacement plans. And so we're trying to look into those categories. You know, they're undersized, they don't have fire flows. You know, how are we going to continue to maintain them as being supplementary systems, maintaining their own stuff outside of us? And that's how these programs are coming together. So it might get more complex than that. A tap fee isn't just a meter fee. It is all of those other things that need to be recovered to make the plan and the program work. So yes, within town, we might have a rate, and that could work and includes the meter fee, but there's also some recovering of capital costs. So it's going to get more complex as we go on. It doesn't have to do that right now. We can adopt the 7%. We can stay where we are, but we'll try to describe what the master plan's recommending, make sure you guys are on board when we adopt it. A little more discussion and say, hey, we've got these areas here, but we've always dealt with these asks of people who are just outside our city limits. We've run into annexation problems. We have a lot of people who haul water. You know, how do we make those programs work? And that's covered in that plan. So at some point, we'll put that on a work session for more discussion and what some of those recommendations look like. But this is going to meet our minimums for now, covers our projects through the SRF, starts to put the capital away for us to move forward. And we recommend we stay here until we know more, essentially.
Sounds good. Anybody?
Mayor,
yeah.
yeah, me
Pick
again.
on you.
So that was my question, and Regine, I think you answered it, but the HDR had the 7% annually, and this one is through 2025. So a 2-year time period, is that a placeholder for now until we start diving into the projects? So do you want to stick with the 2-year plan, or at what point will we start switching to the HDR plan? And I guess really you know, I trust your judgment on that. If you think this works for 2 years, so be it.
Yeah, we think that this can get us to where we need to be for a couple of years. If we need to bring it up sooner, based on the recommendations, but we're really seeing the final capital costs that we talked about going back through the rate recommender at the final hour. And so, that's where we think we're going to be, but if that changes, Missy, we'll be back in here letting you know why and what it changed to. But this keeps us from having to talk about it again next year right away or in 9 months. If we adopt in multiple years or a plan, then we can bring it back up whenever you guys want to talk about the rate adoptions or if they adjust. With the capital loan programs we're recommending, we just want to make sure they're going to work and that you have enough money to pay for them.
Councilman Hahn.
That 7% went to 32? 31. Okay.
Anything else? Good. Good, okay. We'll move on to item C, discussion concerning updates, workers' compensation section in the policy manual. Rachel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I brought this for the council's consideration. Our current policy, of which you'll see many potential updates and changes in the near future, the current policy as it regards to workers' compensation does not allow for an employee that has a workers' compensation injury that is out to use their accrued sick or vacation time or potentially seek donations of that time to make up the 1/3 for them to have a whole salary. So the state of Wyoming's workers' compensation, if someone's out longer than 8 days or 4 days, depending on the situation, will pay 2/3 of their regular salary. That's the program that's in place. So if you have someone, an employee that's injured on the job and is out for a period of time, they potentially take a loss in earnings because our policy won't even allow them, no matter how many vacation or sick days they have accrued, to make themselves whole. So we're asking that the council consider adjusting that policy to allow that individual to use sick or vacation time that they may have accrued, or in certain situations, if they've exhausted all of that, to request donated time like we let employees in other situations. I realized that the piece before you is pretty long and it goes into more depth and detail to that, but it was my opinion, if we're going to redo that section, that we explain a little bit more for our employees how workers' compensation works and detail what the path would be. And I'm happy to answer questions. It follows pretty much state statute, except for the part of us allowing the augmentation for the wage supplement. Adam has reviewed it as well.
Myself, we've had many discussions on this, and I think we have good employees and we need to keep them. We need to help them all we can. And if it's using their vacation time or sick leave to make them whole, I think my opinion is we should do it. But that's why John.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, but is there any disadvantage to doing that?
There can be a disadvantage, which, historically, I understand Lander has had a different program and they switched. My understanding was wanting to encourage employees to come back to work as soon as possible. So the 2/3 could be an economic incentive for that. You may have noticed in my proposed materials, there's also a possibility of light duty for up to, I think it says 12 months, which dovetails with the Wyoming Workers' Compensation light duty program and form. And we do encourage, and we have encouraged employees to come back. And so we have employees who normal job duties may be very physical, and we have a lot of photocopying and scanning and things of that nature, which the council's also heard about recently. And we have set employees up in our conference rooms with computers and accommodations that we can do to accommodate whatever their particular issue may be. And they spend however much time scanning and photocopying, and they're sometimes really ready to go back to their normal position. But they find out the city hall can be fun.
Councilman Hahn.
Do they have to work so many hours a month to keep their insurance?
So that's a really good question. They don't, if they're out on a workers' compensation related injury, have to work a certain number of hours to keep their insurance, but they do have to pay their portion whatever the employee's portion would be or make arrangements for that to happen. So that would be another reason why allowing the 1/3 wage augmentation would be beneficial for the employee. So they can continue to pay some of those
Thank you.
obligations.
Okay. Sound good?
Thank you.
Okay. Item D, discuss concerns about Gannett Peak Safe Routes to School, TAP grant, CD 125510. Regine.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have any new information over my staff updates last time, but this, like the last 3 discussion items, will be on your next voting session. So again, we are doing the Transportation Alternatives Program for construction cost only. It will be for the cost overruns and additional work needed at the Gannett Peak Safe Routes to School. The application is for $986,341. And our match amount, which could come out of 1%, will be $103,569. Be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Councilman Hahn?
I just had one. What are the overruns? Why, where, what is it?
So a lot of these were dealing with property owners and the issues that came about after design as well as inflation. So we're looking at, basically underestimating to start with the project amount in combination with inflation, feeling like we wouldn't have enough funding and then properly doing the job. That's the reason the bid got pulled back as well. When I was looking at the plans, we weren't really solving some of the issues of the project. And what we're doing is trying to address that with property owners directly. We're working with easements and going to be in their front yards. Felt like they were underinformed as far as what the project was. And then we were just avoiding issues rather than addressing them with ADA and some of the things that are coming about on that project. So huge improvements. I think the biggest win for us on that project with pulling it back is the access into Gannett Peak School itself is going to widen and become much more safer, and that the parking drive right next to that, we're talking about the alley entrance off of Fifth, is going away. So that was a previous issue that we weren't able to do when the school was being built, different property owner, different time, able to start making things a lot safer. So seeing big wins, but we were not comfortable with what we were seeing
So
going
it's
out
kind
for
of
bid.
a work in progress type of thing?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it is. And so I think that some of it is our pickiness and the way that we want the project to go and be successful so that we don't see these things as change orders in the back end. And then some of it is just the oil and other things we were talking about that got more expensive, the laborers, the concrete, everything else that goes into doing a project.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I might add that this solution was brought to us by the YDOT team because we said we only have, half the money that we need to do the project, so we could do it in 2 phases. And they said, no, keep the existing phase alive and just make this application for what they're calling cost overruns. So that's their term, not ours.
Okay, any other questions? Yes? Okay, call it a night. Thank you guys for coming. Glad I ate a hot dog.
Otherwise, I get too hungry.